So, welcome, Deneen, to Write That Book, Build Your Business. We're happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be
And
here, Corey.
so, I'm Corey Walmsley, and I'm a writing coach, a book editor, and a best-selling author. And we're here today with Deneen Joyner, and she's going to be talking about her book, her business, her journey. We have so much to talk about today. We might be on here all day. So I'm going to let Deneen introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her and what she does, and then we'll dive into her book.
Thank you again. Thank you for having me. And I have to apologize for your listeners. I'm a little raspy today. I was talking to Corey before we came live and told her that I kind of battle with allergies. And so this is basically the result of that. So hopefully you can understand me. My name is Deneen Joyner, and I am a soul medium, a spiritual coach, and a storyteller on behalf of my brand, Deneen Joyner. I am a spiritual influencer as well as a spirit guide here basically to impart wisdom and healing for people who have unresolved emotional pain. I help them in a number of different ways. Primarily, I use my gifts as the medium and as a shaman to basically bridge their soul to mine. So I basically just read their soul and I'm able to extract their wounds, their family karma, their experiences that have created them to be numb and disconnected and to just give up. So I'm able to really just go there and draw that out. And so their experiences become mine temporarily. So I'm able to use the language that they would use to describe their pain. I'm able to meet them where they are, but I'm also able to show them a new way to view and experience their life. I'm just really, really excited to be here to talk about my book, which is a part of my brand as well, and to just show you and your followers basically how you can literally build a brand around a book.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're here because I think we met like last fall maybe, and
Yes.
just hearing little bits and pieces of your story because I think we were in a couple coaching programs together.
Yes.
And it's just been amazing hearing these little pieces. And I finally actually managed to pick up a copy of the book this spring. So I've gotten
Me too. Look, me
a third of the way
too.
through. We have the same one. And it's so amazing to me that, first of all, I think your gift is just amazing that you have that. And
Thank you.
I keep hearing these stories of people who have gifts like this and they feel like they have to keep them inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
And at least the part that I've gotten through in the book, that's what we're talking about, is keeping your gifts inside of you and not feeling like you can show them because you're going to be judged, you're going to be shamed,
Yes.
whatever it is. So that's, kind of how we start out at this book. You're hitting that rock bottom where you're like, okay, all I've got left is my gifts and I don't even know if I want that anymore.
That's right.
So can you start out, first of all, by just telling us a little bit about the book, about what you talk about in the book, and what made you want to write it to begin with?
Yes. So as you mentioned, I hit rock bottom in 2011. I had been, really, really, most of my life, I honestly have to say that it has been a snowball effect, literally. And that's how it is for most people with emotional pain. And I believe that we do that, we carry it, we resolve to doing that because we know no other way to live. Mm-hmm. I always tell people that, our parents have taught us, all the pleasantries when it comes to manners. They've taught you basically to cross the street when the light is green, to not cross the street when it's red. When people gift you with something for your birthday, you say thank you. You write a note card. So they told you all of those things. But what they haven't told us is how to respond to emotional pain. So when a painful event happens in someone's life or a trauma, most times what people do is they fashion and they actually respond to what they have seen. And so they look at their primary caretaker, which is their parents, or it could be somebody who actually raised them. within their family. But that is still your primary caretaker. And so usually what we see when we respond unconsciously is what we saw. We adopt that. So whatever we saw our parents do, how they emote is generally how we emote. And the change comes when you're able to be consciously aware of that. If you can look at your own emotional framework and you can say, this doesn't really feel right. I want to be able to express myself. I'm tired of stuffing it down. I'm tired of telling people it's okay when it's not. And so if you can start to just consciously become aware that that is occurring for you, then it starts to become more empowering and you start to become more consciously aware of your responses and the similarities to that of your caretakers. And so I personally started my journey once I hit rock bottom. And this was after I had learned and adopted from my parents. So my primary caretakers were my mother, who was Native American, very meek and mild woman. I never saw her cry, Corey. Never
Yeah.
saw her cry. So therefore, I didn't cry either.
Mm-hmm.
My father, who was in and out of our home, he is West African Nigerian, and he had an explosive temper. When I say explosive, I mean explosive to the point where he was physically and verbally abusive to my mother. So I had two, sides of the spectrum. Somebody who didn't emote, was very quiet, and somebody who just ripped everybody from limb to,
Yeah.
So I knew consciously, though, I knew at 5 that I didn't really want to be like either one of them. I knew that it was kind of like, I don't want to be like mom. I don't want to be like dad. So you have to try to figure out, how do you want to be? And that took me a while to unpack that. And so because my mother was my primary caretaker for the most part, I adopted her ways. And so my ability to stuff things down, to tell people it was okay when it wasn't, to wear the mask, to not cry, was comfortable to me because that's what I saw. However, when I became a young woman, it started to bother me that I had these emotions stirring around in me and I couldn't let them out. There were times when I wanted to cry, I could not cry. And that is so frustrating. And I have to say, because I'm talking about tears, these illuminated tears that I have on my face basically are my trademark for people who are doing the work. I want them to, at some point, to be able to emote, to cry. And they're illuminated because you're actually crying on purpose. It's actually shedding light on something. So that's why they're golden.
And I kind of wondered about that.
Yeah.
For sharing.
Yes. And so I realized that I had a lot of work to do. I had 18 years in social work. And the irony was that I could help everybody else with their problems. I mean, really, really help them out. When it came to me, not so much.
Yeah.
And so I could literally feel, Corey, the walls like this, closing in, like with every year, every month. And I said, something's about to happen. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but I need to ready myself for it. I could not ready myself for what happened emotionally. I had basically lost everything. I left social work because I was drained. I was exhausted and I wanted something different. So I was just pursuing my master's in adult education and curriculum design. And the plan was to pivot and actually go into training because I love to teach. And so that's where I was headed. But God had a different plan for me. And so the evening at question where I basically literally came face to face with my life, my mortality, as far as just, I had given up. Mm-hmm. And that was a good thing. I didn't realize that, surrendering and not having any more tricks in your bag was a good thing. Mm-hmm. I was just so emotionally exhausted. And so my car ended up getting repossessed. And I knew that it was just a matter of time. I mean, I knew it. I had already bought 5 months. And I said to myself, I can't believe like they haven't found me yet. And so I was like, it was just like, I would come out, Corey, I would hold my breath. Just imagine having to go to work and literally, you're coming out and you're like, is it there? Oh God, it's still there.
Yeah. Oh.
I would get up to go to the bathroom. I would look through the window. Is it still there? Thank God it was still there. Same thing. I would go to work, and I was a director of a major program. So I'm like, I'll be mortified if they come to my job and take my car. But that never happened. What happened was they came to my house.
Yeah.
They found me. So when that happened, I was already basically on my last leg emotionally. Like I said to myself, if anything else happens, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I can't hold on anymore. And so something else did happen. My car got repoed. And I felt like when that occurred, I felt like my heart and everything was being repoed too. I felt like I had no value. I felt worthless. I was ashamed because your car's getting repoed. Like for real?
Yeah.
It was an awful time, but it was also the beginning of my journey to return back to who I am, who you see here today. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the beginning of the journey, but I had to really just surrender to that moment and give in and really just ask God to be my teacher, because I knew at the end of the day that I was hoping that my life was going to be more than me wanting to end my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really just pleaded. I became angry. I went through a whole litany of emotions, with God, and because I didn't understand why he would put that on my heart to want to end my life after I had been through so much pain, and I had always been good to people, to a fault. Like really, people would take advantage of me. I was bullied, just the whole 9 yards. And I just couldn't figure out, like, why would God want me to take my life? And he didn't want me to take my life. What he wanted, like I said, was to just take everything away. Mm-hmm. So he literally took me to ground zero.
Yeah.
And, once that happened, I had to wait on him to rebuild everything, excuse me. And so when I did that, it took me back to the beginning of how I learned about emotional pain from my parents, what I knew about just, being Native American and being West African, and the role that played in my ancestors' plight with, just with resiliency and strength and power. That came in later on in my journey. And it was so powerful to discover that, my ancestors, both sides, they each had their own story in the world. Native American people, we know that they've never really been treated fairly, and, things have been taken from them wrongly, and people don't understand their gifts, and they're shunned because of them, or they're thought of as witches. And then my African ancestors, pretty much the same. They were slaves. They were bought here unwillingly, and they had to make a life here, with just so much pain, and with people who hated them. But they both endured. So I had to draw on that strength. Mm-hmm. I had to draw on that endurance, that resiliency, that power, because that is me as well. And I used that during my journey. When I concluded my journey 3.5 years after, I knew in that moment what I was placed here to do, because Holy Spirit basically spoke to me and told me why I was here. Mm-hmm. And he also told me that I needed to share my journey with other people now that I had mastered it, now that I had channeled all of the healing, in that I needed to basically do that. And I thought to myself, I had lived my life as a hermit, Corey, because of these gifts. So I didn't have many friends at all. My entire life, like seriously, I could probably count on one hand and probably maybe 3, 4 just consistently grow. Like I did not have a lot of friends. And I did that on purpose because of the bullying and the gifts. And I just secluded myself all the time. So, home basically was where my heart was, because that's where I was safe. I didn't have to worry about anybody bullying me, misinterpreting what I was saying. I didn't have to feel energy and really pull in what other people were dealing with. So it was just safe.
Yeah. I feel like when you were talking about at the beginning of the book, all this like stuffing down and building boundaries and, putting up these walls, that stuff really resonated. And I will say, I think we talked about this yesterday when we were doing our pre-call. You do such a good job of putting the person in the scene. And you're talking about how numb you were and how like you were just saying about this generational thing. You're looking at your family. Well, how do they react to pain?
Yes.
And not crying. And I mean that really got me, because I remember times in my life when I've just stopped reacting physically to things because I'm jamming it all inside. In particular, I remember during my first marriage where I was like, I can't react, I'm pissed off, but I can't react. And reading things and laughing in my head or crying in my head, like I'm not emotional. Or in particular, at the beginning of this, where you're talking about shopping as the means of stuffing. And I was like, oh, other people do that. Because I used to have, tons and tons of clothes, all the colors, all the things, closet full. I had to have all this stuff. And it was because of that emptiness inside.
That's right.
And I don't think we always recognize that. So I love that you talked about that up front, that you're giving people these things like, this is how I experienced it. This was my world within this wall.
Yes, for
and
sure.
You might be there too.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. You're so right. It, like you said, when we were speaking yesterday, and I was telling you basically, I really, it was really important for me to, when I was given this assignment to help other people, and I thought to myself, I don't know a lot of people, so how can I get this message out to people I would never know? Mm-hmm. And so instantly it was like, you have to write a book. And I said it just like, so like, matter of fact, you have to write a book. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. And so I said, wow. I said, okay. And, I've always enjoyed writing, and I've always enjoyed creative writing. And I've had to write papers where, the material was like, but I always did good. So when I actually got something that I really could just sink my teeth in and really just be creative, it was just like, wow. And so I knew that it was possible, but I said, I don't know. I'm like, wow, that's a big undertaking to have to write a book. That's what I'm thinking. Like, you've never written a book. You've written papers consistently that got A's. That's different than writing a book.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, let me just think about this, but it would not leave me. You have to write a book. So I said, okay. So literally, Corey, 2014, I healed. 2014, I start writing a book. It took me 2 years on my own to write this book. And when I say 2 years, I mean, it was just thick when I printed it out. I went to Kinko's and finally printed the thing out. It was just thick. Wow. 2 years. And so again, at the time, I was not a professional writer, author, anything. So I really didn't know at the end of the day if all of this really was something. Okay. So then I had to actually go into the process of finding an editor. Mm-hmm. And not just any editor. I knew that I needed to have somebody who had a very solid spiritual belief of their own. They had to be spiritual.
Yeah.
I knew that. I made a list of things, and I said, this person they have to be spiritual, and you're going to laugh at this. I wanted them to be a woman. I knew I needed a woman editor because I knew that I needed that softness. Okay. I knew that I needed her to capture the essence of me, and I didn't believe a man could do that. Now, he probably could help me with another book, but not this book. Right. This was a memoir, and this was a different memoir because, as you know, it's not just about my life that's playing out. I go back in time, and I introduce you to my family, my ancestors. I bring that forward, and it's basically like a string, really, that, and I always liken it to pulling a string from a piece of clothing, and it actually unravels. And it goes back to the source of where it's unraveling. And that's what I did in this book. I wanted people to see that I had taken a thread, a tiny thread, which was my life, and I followed it back in time. And then I brought it actually forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what the book does.
Yeah, and that is so amazing. And I understand wanting to find somebody that, resonates with you and would understand your story, because, everybody is approaching things from different ways. Like the way I approach editing a book or coaching somebody is going to be completely different from how, even another woman across town might be doing it. So, I mean, you need to find somebody that's going to get you and
I
get
think
your story.
so.
Yeah.
That's so important. I think, and I know that you privately coach, and I think it's so important to empower first-time authors, writers, to do that. Like, this is your work. You're allowed to interview people. You don't have to just, you don't have to just go online and blindly pick and hope for the best. No, and I know that you educate the people that you work with, you empower them. And, like I said, you're an advocate for sure for people who are writers. And we need more of that. We need more advocates. We need more people like you who can really help people who, really don't have a clue, but they have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can be a confusing process too. And I know we talked a little bit yesterday about how you were searching for somebody and you ran across a business and it ended up not being a good match for you.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Can you talk about that a little?
Sure. This was the publishing aspect of it. So I was blessed enough to actually find my editor, Gina Mazza.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she's phenomenal. So then the other piece was, now that I had her, I knew at some point that the book was going to be done. So I needed to start to actually research and shop around again, which is something that people need to do. Depending on, what your genre is, what your goal is for your book, it makes all the difference for, when you're shopping for, your book to be published. And there's so many things out there now that's great. There's the traditional, there's the hybrid, which is a blend of the traditional and basically the more progressive of, allowing you to really just self-publish, or there's the self-publishing.
Right.
So I actually was going in with, I want to work with a hybrid publisher. I did not want to work with a traditional publisher because I already knew that my story needed to be authentic. It needed to maintain the integrity of my story, meaning I did not want anybody to change anything at all, because this was a memoir. Now, if this was a nonfiction, sci-fi book, or, romance, then maybe you could. But this was my story. So you can't change my story because it's my story. You know what I mean? So I said, I have to make sure that I find the right balance. So I went with a hybrid publisher. And so I was so excited, Corey, to finally find these people, because they actually specialize in spiritual books.
Right.
And my book is a spiritual book. So I'm like, ding, 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 like, great.
Yeah.
And I read about them, and, I looked at all of the other books that they had published and helped. I was like, wow, this was a godsend. So I was so excited to get started with them. And I did. And so I was probably about 3 months into, being mentored by them. And it was phenomenal. I have to say that in the beginning, they really gave me all of the elements of, like the synopsis for the book. They had me write that. And it's really important, this synopsis, to be able to break down each chapter and give people bite size about what each chapter is. Because what I find, especially when I'm doing podcasts like yours, radio, I can actually send that. And so it speaks for itself. So they don't have to read the whole book if they don't have time. The synopsis gives them, it's like a cheat sheet.
Right.
So they look at it, they're like, oh, okay, that's what that's about. And then they can formulate their questions around that.
Yes.
So, it was like, wow. So I was learning so much from this, hybrid publisher. And so I got to a point where they wanted me to meet one-on-one with the owner. So the owner was literally going to critique your work. He would read the synopsis and he would give you feedback, basically. So he had done that, and this was our phone call. This is my first time meeting him one-on-one. And so because of my gifts, I could sense and feel. As soon as he said, "Hi, Deneen," I said, "Oh boy." I said, "This doesn't feel like a good conversation." That's what I'm saying to myself. He said, "I read over your synopsis." He said, "This is really interesting." When people tell me something's interesting, I know that that means it's not interesting. It means that they're fearful, that they don't understand what I'm talking about, but they're trying to be nice. So when I hear interesting, I'm like, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said it was interesting. I said, okay. I'm like this, Corey. Let me put my seatbelt on.
Yeah, exactly.
He says, okay, well, he goes, I need to read your book completely now. He goes, there's some red flags. And I'm like thinking, red flags, like, wow. Now I know that my book is a little racy. I don't know where you are in the book, but I really am very transparent about my life. And there has been, some unfortunate things happen, like rapes, a date rape, things of that. And, and I'm graphic with it because that's what it is. It was my life. And I want people to know, what I endured so that they can celebrate where I am now, So that's why I was given such detail. So anyway, he's reading all this. The thing that he honed in on was my gifts and the fact that I was mentioning my ancestors channeled information, healing information that healed me. And so he said he had to get back to me. He was going to read it.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll get back to you. And he did. Now, while he said that, I was really perplexed because this man he once was a pastor. And so for him to question, my gifts, the fact that I'm able to channel, and I'm thinking, you're a man of God. Even if you're not at the pulpit, you're still a man of God. And like, why are you having such difficulty understanding that I have gifts? It speaks about it in so many different ways in the Bible and how God used people to heal other people. He did. Yes. So why are you, so afraid? So anyway, he gets back to me in a few days. He actually read the book and he said, he goes, I have some unfortunate news. And I said, okay. He says, we're going to have to discontinue our relationship with you. I said, well, what does that mean exactly? He goes, well, that means that we're not going to publish you. When you publish, you can't use our name or likeness. You can't mention us when you do interviews. Don't put us anywhere on your book. And basically have a nice life.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you didn't let the end of that relationship stop you from publishing because, when you have something that's like, I need to get this out.
Yes.
You got to find another way. So I'm glad you found another way to do this. And I'm glad it's out because everybody needs to, people need to get their stories out and they need to share with people and help them heal. So
Thank you.
I'm so glad you did that.
Thank you.
And
I am too.
I wanted to talk a little about how you use your book in your business today, because I know you mentioned on the phone a couple different ways that you use it, and it's become a flexible tool for you. So
yes.
Not just putting it out and saying, hey, here's my story, have fun, read it, and then there's no contact. Like you have concrete ways that you use it in your business.
I do.
And
I do.
I love this. So just go ahead and talk about that.
Okay. So basically, when somebody actually privately coaches with me, they actually get, this is the paperback, but they actually get the hardback copy of my book and it's signed. So I do that and they love that. They're like, oh my goodness, like how endearing is that and how personalized is that? And I actually, write them a message. And so they get the book immediately. And then what happens is we use the book throughout the coaching that I do with them. So I have them read like 3 chapters every time we meet. And I usually meet with people every other week. So they have to read the 3 chapters. And they also get spiritual homework that is in support of what we're working on personally for them.
Mhm.
And the reason why I have them read the book, they actually read the entire book before it's all said and done.
Mhm.
And the reason why I do that is because I want them to be able to become enlightened by my journey and what I uncovered.
Mhm.
And so we use that basically as the dialogue when I'm coaching them so that they feel more comfortable and they can be transparent as well.
Mhm.
Because when you read my story, then it gives you permission to tell yours.
Yes.
And so we use the book to basically be that platform and foundation for our work,
Mhm.
as well as as well as the spiritual homework that I give them as well. And so we use the book that way. I also use the book because I have groups. I do group work.
Mhm.
And so people actually use the book because we develop questions and we actually use the book to do the journeying work. So there's levels of healing. The first level is awakening.
Mhm.
The second level is journeying. And the third level is mastering. So I use the book to actually explore that. Again, using my own life
Mhm.
to actually show those stages of healing.
Yeah. And I know you had referred to your book as a memoir.
Mhm.
And I always feel like it's more than that because you aren't telling your story alone. You're also coming at it from this higher perspective of where you
Mhm.
are now.
Mhm.
So, like, I think the first chapter was surrender. Was it surrender?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So like the way she has her book divided is, I'm like talking to the audience. The way she has the book divided up is she's talking about the different things that she's learning along the way. So
Yes.
you can break it down and use it for coaching. And
Mhm.
that I thought that was a wonderful way to do this. That's usually how I teach my coaching clients to do it, is to, use your story as the
Mhm.
vehicle that's moving people through their transformation.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then I also use it when I go out to do public speaking.
Mhm.
I've been able to build a lot of different content and a lot of my public speaking, the talks that I have developed and formulated, again, they come from my book. So
Mhm.
I'm able to really just take a chapter and really just expound on that. And everything in my book is, geared on spiritual Native American ancient. It's my ancestors' practices that
Mhm.
date back over 500 years. And so what I've done is to be able to take this download and literally make it new. And it took me some time to do that, Corey, because, you know, my gifts. So when I tap into spirit, when I tap into my ancestors, when they talk to me, they don't speak the language that we speak here. It's different.
Okay.
So it's literally me having to translate not only their language, but translate what they're telling me about healing, how they used to do it. And I really, really have to meditate and get grounded so that I can take all that in and actually think of a way to flip it on its ear and bring it current. So that took me a long time. That was not a small feat,
Yeah.
but I was able to do it, like you said, and it's not just a memoir. It really is a blueprint for healing. If somebody wanted to start to heal their life, if they read my book, they would be well on their way, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, so we talked about how you use it with coaching and with speaking. I feel like it's, the way that I teach how to do books, it's a piece of your business. And
Hmm.
you exemplify that so well. So that's one of the reasons I was excited to talk about this, was because you are, using parts of it in your speaking. And I know a lot of people out there are speakers, or they're thinking about being speakers. And being able to use the material that you have, or that you're downloading or whatever, in different ways, it makes it flexible. And it's also like people look at you and they go, oh, that's that person, that's their story, and they know it, they
Hmm.
remember it. And then you get more in the book. You can say, oh, go to my book for more. So
Hmm.
that's all just such good stuff here.
Thank
um,
you. And I want to say something else, Corey. Just for your listeners and your followers.
yeah.
I just want to say that, it is possible to be a first-time author and be successful. I am a first-time author, and I just won a national award for my book. And I just entered, I know, right? And I just entered a month ago an international contest, and I should learn about the results of that mid-July. but I already got a correspondence from them saying that I already made the finalist, the third. There's 3 finalists for every category, and I'm one of the 3 finalists.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I think a big part of the success thing is people think that, if they're traditionally published, that they just hand over their book and, it all happens. Whereas with people thinking about, self-publishing or hybrid publishing, that it's all on you, but you're still just going to put it out there and things happen. With any type of publishing, it's not like that at all. You have to seek out those things. So you probably didn't just sit there and go, wonder if an award's going to happen. And it just happened. You looked for these things, right? You sought them out.
Right.
So part
you
of it
really
is,
just have to, really, on top of having, a phenomenal coach like yourself, you really have to believe in yourself, So beyond Corey, coaching and being your cheerleader and being, the expert, she can only do but so much for you. You have to really believe in yourself, believe in your book and your project, no matter what, because you're going to have some people who are going to test you. And it's going to be a true test, not only for them, but for yourself. Are you going to be able to just stand up for yourself? Or are you going to be able to weather the storm? Because it's not going to always be smooth sailing. It's not. And that's going to be, it's going to make you or break you. But if you believe in your project, I say, hold on to it. Don't let anybody tell you anything differently. There's somebody out there who will take your project and will help you bring it to fruition, for sure.
I love that message. And keep going. Keep
Yes.
looking for more stuff. You're going to get a lot of no's.
That's right.
Looking for the yes. So
yes.
Yeah. And I love that you are out there winning awards with your book that almost didn't get published, but
almost didn't get published. That's right. And Corey, they told me don't mention her name, so I'm not.
But you did it, and it's out there. So
that's right.
Wow. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us before we wrap?
You know what? I do want to share something.
Okay.
I made my book accessible for, you can of course get it Barnes and Noble online, Amazon online, Kindle, but it's also available on my website, deneenjoyner.com. I'm giving it away as a free gift. It's a PDF download. And I did that because, I often get messages from people who say, your book sounds wonderful, but I can't afford it.
Okay.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So and because of the fact that it is a healing book, a help book, I want to make it accessible to anybody. So that's why I made it free. And it's just going to be on there. You can download it as many times as you want. I don't care. I hope you read it, and I hope you tell other people, to read it. And that's why I did that, because, it's just important that people have access to it. And then I also will be uploading this, which is a different book that I wrote. And so this is me right here.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
It's called Jesus' Expectations for His Daughters. And I actually wrote this year with all of these women. And it basically is a compilation. It's encouragement. It's designed for women, but men can read it too. But it's designed for women, almost like sisterhood, encouraging and just spiritual uplifting for people, women who are going through something. And they just need, to hear from their sister who can say, hang in there. I've been through, that too. Look, this is what I did, to turn things around. So that'll be available on my website as well. And then I have some other things coming up. So if they really just go to my website, stay connected to me that way. And then also if they would go to my Facebook page, which is Choose to Be Empowered. And if they would like and follow me, then they'll always know where I am and what I'm up to.
Okay. And we'll put those links in the comments below.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that you are giving your book too. And I do have people sometimes when I'm like, yeah, you can give your book away. They're like, why would I invest my time and my money doing this book? And now you want me to give it to people? It pays dividends down the road.
It does.
It changes lives, and
it does.
People are going to remember you. And you never know when putting those, those little sparks out there, when something's really going to turn out.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So what a wonderful message to end on. And, if you have questions, if you're watching the replay and you want to comment, I've been watching for questions and I haven't seen anything. So if you have questions now, you have questions in the, if you're watching the replay, just comment below. Deneen or I will be happy to answer you. Thank you again, Deneen, for joining us today and for sharing about your gifts and your book and just everything wonderful. Yeah, so I hope everyone else has a great day and we'll see you soon. Bye. All right. Okay.